said, I am Stephen Mullins. I'm the president of the Union of Black Episcopalians for the Southern Connecticut Chapter. And I'll get a little bit more into that later on, specifically about UBE and specifically the Southern Connecticut Chapter as we go on. But this is an interesting question. And I didn't write any notes down or anything. I'm just basically doing this off the cuff. But anyone in this room, would you say that the Episcopal Church is a white denomination? Anyone here would say that?
It used to be.
Yes.
It's predominantly.
I feel like this is a trick question.
I do too. I was going to be really quiet. I'm not answering that.
All right. No, I mean, no answer's wrong. I mean, do you think it is, or do you think it isn't? What is it? What do we think?
Probably, yes.
Yes.
I mean, it's got a white viewpoint, probably, point of view, I guess. Is that what you're thinking?
Not point of view. I'm talking about people.
Oh, just the population.
Yeah.
Well, you have a mixture of everybody in it.
At least in the United States.
But
was just
it's
gonna
more
say,
white
have
than
you
anybody else.
Have you
yeah.
been
Right,
to
okay.
The numbers, statistically.
So the Anglicanism in the world, we're talking because we are part of the Anglican Communion. As Episcopalians in the United States, it's only in this population, we're among the smallest of mainline denominations there are. I mean, I don't even know we're at 2 million anymore. We used to be 3 million a long time ago, and I think we've just gone down as years have progressed on. So when it comes to the worldwide Anglicanism, we're actually very small. And when it comes to Anglicans in the world, the vast majority of Anglicans in the world, Anglican Christians, are black. They're in Africa, in all parts of Africa. They're in the West Indies. And the old saying goes that throughout the reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 until her death in 1901, wherever the Union Jack went in the world, where the sun never set upon the British Empire, following the Union Jack. Oh, what are you at?
I'm the Jack.
Following a very bad artist, the Union Jack was the cross of Christ. Now, I'm not saying that everything that happened in the British Empire, oh, that's a horrible cross. So, that is terrible. So, I'm not saying that everything that happened in the British Empire was wonderful and great. No, there was lots of atrocities that took place during the British Empire. It was you had to take the good with the bad and so forth. But one thing that happened was the Anglicanism, the Anglican Church, was spread throughout the British Empire, which mainly took a lot of Africa and the West Indies. So the vast majority of Anglicans, Anglican Christians in the world, are black and other people of color. In the late 1940s, there was a black couple that went to a church. You may have heard this story before, but don't give it away. They went to a church, an Episcopal church. She was Episcopalian. They were engaged to get married. She was Episcopalian. Her husband was Baptist and was studying to be a Baptist pastor. They go to an Episcopal church where they are the only black people in this parish. This is late 1940s, so there was probably a lot of people in that church. Okay? Black people went to church, and it was the thing to do. And the Mass went on as normal. Then it got time for Holy Communion, Liturgy, Eucharist. The words of consecration are recited by the priest, etc., etc. And it's time for communion. So she said, well, to her fiance, well, you can come for a blessing or, just stay in the pews. So he decided to stay in the pews. She went up and he's watching. He's looking to see what's going to happen. Kneeling at the altar rail, and the priest gives out the host to all the people at the altar rail. And then there's a chalice. And of course, this is pre-pandemic and everything else. Pre-pandemic by 70 or so years. So it was a common cup chalice. And the priest is going down, and what are the words? No, it was something different back then.
Yeah. Before my time.
Take this in remembrance that Christ died for you.
That's right.
In faith and thanksgiving. I've got the wording mixed up. I used to say it when I was a Eucharist minister, and we did it at the altar rail. You change things now. And then it gets to the fiance, the woman. He's watching like, all right, now they're gonna kick her out of there. He's like looking like this isn't gonna happen. This is just wow. They got one cup and they're gonna get. And just like everyone else, the priest, body and blood, and shed for you. Remember, Christ died for you. Remember, peace in your heart, faith, thanksgiving, something like that. Correct me, I know I'm wrong. And she received from the same cup that everyone else received from, and back to her pew. Needless to say, that man did not get ordained as Baptist pastor. He decided to become an Episcopalian because he decided that any church was willing to share a cup with the whites and blacks was the church he wanted to belong to. And that couple was married. I don't know if they were married in the Episcopal Church or not. I have no idea. I don't know how many children they had. I know they had one child in particular who became a deacon in the Episcopal Church. And later on, that child became a priest in the Episcopal Church. And later on, he was ordained a diocesan bishop in the Episcopal Church. He does something now. What does he do now? Anybody have any guess what he does now? Yeah, so you've all heard the story already.
I didn't realize it first.
Okay? And that is His Grace the Most Reverend Michael Bruce Curry, the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church of the United States, who was the first black presiding bishop in our fold. Now, one would think that due to that wonderful story and his progression through the ranks, I'm sure he was an acolyte, I'm sure he may have been in the choir, I'm sure he was a Eucharistic minister and became a deacon, etc., and through the ranks of this one black man, that anyone who hears the story would think, oh, the Episcopal Church is absolutely perfect when it comes to the race and so forth. No. Because just like the rest of the United States, there were serious issues when it came to race. We're talking about around that same time period, the late 1940s, deputies in the House of Deputies, which is the national, if you're not familiar with it, we're governed by not just presiding bishop, but we have a national body. We have the House of Bishops. For lack of a better term, you like the United States Senate or the State Senate. All right. Then you've got the House of Deputies, which is you two might be more familiar with it. There's some variety, right? Lay and priest, lay and clergy together. Okay. And there were times during that time period, in the late 1940s, where there were black deputies, but they may not have been in an area where they could even go to the convention. There was a convention, a national convention of the Episcopalian delegates that took place was it in Houston, and they couldn't go because they didn't have accommodations for them. It was Houston. It was the 50s. It was Texas didn't have equal accommodations for blacks and whites. So how are you going to have conventions in places where, okay, you're allowing black deputies, but deputies can't even really be part of it? I believe they ended up changing the location. Going back to the end of slavery, there were bishops in the Episcopal Church who were black, but they were only allowed to minister to other black people. They could not, in the sacrament of confirmation, have a laying of hands and anyone white. You're not going to have whether they're a bishop or not, you're not going to have a white person was going to have a black man putting his hands on them. That just wasn't going to happen. This is what you did. So we have a history, a negative history also, despite the fact that yes, we can share a common cup. Back then, we can share a common cup, but there was still other things that kept many black people back in the church. Met Father Simmons a couple weeks ago at the Feast of Absalom Jones, which took place at St. Monica's Church in Hartford. Does anyone know the story of Absalom Jones? Okay.
Tell it again.
All right. Well, we're gonna learn a few things. He's the first black priest in the Episcopal Church. He has a feast day that's dedicated to him, which is February 13th, which is the day of his death. I forget what year. Strange how we always have feast days and days of people's deaths, but that's just how it works. I never asked, it's just how it is. And as far as I know, he wasn't martyred. I think he died of natural causes, as far as I know. But there was and I highly recommend next February, ironically happening Black History Month, your choir master has, around the time of February 13th, this hymn to black saints. In this book, in this Lift Every Voice and Sing hymnal, there's many hymns dedicated to black saints, and he is considered blessed in the Episcopal Church. There's also a hymn to Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. King, in here also. And this 7-verse hymn, which I am not going to sing to your great pleasure, tells the entire story, or a very good portion of the story, of Father Absalom Jones, first black priest in the Episcopal Church. And it also tells how black Episcopalians and our brothers and sisters in the African Methodist Episcopal Church are connected. Absalom Jones was a slave from Delaware. And he, long story short, was able to eventually purchase his own freedom. He was able to learn to read. He was able to purchase the freedom of his wife. She learned to read. He became a lay reader, a licensed lay reader in the Methodist Church, which back then was called the Methodist Episcopal Church. Today it's called the United Methodist Church. He and his friend, very good friend and colleague, Richard Allen, were both Methodist lay ministers together at the St. George Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia. Fast forward, this is the Cliff Note version of the story. Fast forward, there were issues with the white congregants who were leading that parish. Blacks could only be in the balcony, whites were on the floor of the church. At some point in time, there was a prayer meeting in the balcony with just the black parishioners being led by Richard Allen and Absalom Jones. Maybe I don't know the circumstances exactly why, but maybe the time wasn't right. Maybe the senior warden was expecting to be there. I don't know, but for whatever reason, they were wrestled from their knees and kicked out of that church. And it caused a major schism, if I said that right, in the Methodist Church. Major splits. Richard Allen, outraged and angry, was able to form his own church called the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Now, the word Episcopal, in this case, we're not talking about it's not an official connection to Anglicanism at all. They're using the word bishops. Now, in Greek, all right, so Episcopal means bishop, all right? Episkopos is the word bishop in Greek. It means overseer, all right? So when I say Methodist Episcopal, that means they've got bishops that oversee them. That's something to do with Anglicanism at all. Richard Allen formed his own form of Methodism called the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Pulled black people out of the Methodist Church into his own. And AME Church is still very much alive today. There have been other splinters also. You've got the AME Zion Church, which is the same wording, except they added Zion to it, which is another Methodist denomination, and that was led by Bishop Varick. The same reason they split off from the Methodist Church for racial purposes. Then there's another form of Methodism. It was called the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church. When that word color got out of fashion, it became the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, so they wouldn't have to change the acronym. And that came out of it. So the Methodist Church split up in all kinds of ways. Absalom Jones decided, and I don't know exactly why, but I'm glad he did, decided to seek ordination in the Episcopal Church. And he became a deacon and a priest, and he founded the St. Thomas African Episcopal Church in Philadelphia, which is still a very much alive and buzzing church to this day. Although he sought ordination with us, there were still issues. And those issues that I spoke about already, with segregated bishops. At that time, of course, we weren't getting deputies in the general conventions at all. And lots of issues that he faced and challenged. I've spoken to several priests, older priests, who gone through seminary, whether it be Yale, Divinity, Berkeley, or any place else, black priests. And they talked to me about their issues and struggles they had in divinity school with other blacks of different denominations, Baptist, AME, Zion, and so forth. Why are you in that white church? They have to explain exactly what I've explained to you. In many cases, a lot of black Episcopalians have come directly from Africa, have come from the West Indies, where the Union Jack landed and the cross followed. And that is why, in many cases, you've got, I'm not one by the way, but in many cases you've got Episcopalians, black Episcopalians, who are directly descended from the West Indies. Because most of the priests that were ordained in the West Indies ended up coming to the United States and being in the Episcopal Church and in predominantly black parishes. So in many cases, Harlem, larger cities. Harlem in New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, where many of these people from the West Indies went to. They found the Episcopal Church, or they founded a parish. And what they saw, every black Episcopalian, every Episcopalian they ever met was black, because there were these large black parishes. And a lot of other denominations that had black people just did not see that. So there have been many cases, and I don't know about the four black women in here. I'm sorry, I didn't look over there. 4 black women in here. I don't think they've experienced the same thing, but I'll tell you what my experience has been. I have, my son was he was a little uncute at the time. He's now 16 and driving me absolutely out of my mind. But yeah, it's been a challenge. But anyway, he's a good kid overall, he really is. But anyway, he was in a play, a Broadway performance that traveled. This is 6 years ago. It's called Kinky Boots. We'll get into that later on. And so I was pretty much abruptly taken from my job. I'm like, all right, you got to travel the country in Canada for 6 months with this kid. Like, really? So my wife, I was a property manager. My wife was a registered nurse. She's saving lives. I'm collecting rent. So who's gonna go? Me. So uprooted my life and everything else. And before leaving, the parish, you know, they gave him a nice send off, goodbye, and then it was a cute little acolyte. It was just great, right? Now he can't stand acolyting. You gotta get him up in the morning. He's like, oh, I have to go, like blah blah blah. Anyway, so and so I said, you know what? No matter where we are in the country, or we're in Canada, Sunday morning we're gonna find an Episcopal Church, or Anglican in Canada, and we're gonna go. The nearest one to the hotel. So we did. In every place we went, boy oh boy. Have you gotten that whenever you got another Episcopal Church? Have you ever? And every place I went, I had to justify why we were there. And it was crazy, it really was. And majority of the cities we went to happened to ironically be sea cities, and the closest parish happened to be the local cathedral. It didn't matter. In Canada, it was always, Vancouver was really interesting. Christ Church Cathedral, Vancouver. Boy, those were some serious looks there. It's like they'd never seen anyone like us there. And except the few that were there, they were kind of used to it, I guess. But like, who's this? I'm like, oh, well, we're here for the week, you know, just, you know, my son's in performance. Oh, we're going to see that tonight. Oh, well, and one place we were in Clearwater. Was it Clearwater? No, it was Sarasota, Florida. And this parish, it was a big parish. There had to have been a good 200, 300 people at that mass, all of whom had to have had the average age of 62. And we were just, they couldn't keep away from us. Like they never saw black people before at all. It was really interesting. The reason why I say that is because it's, despite how far we've come, and that was 2017, we got a little ways to go. As far as the expectation of diversity in our particular parishes. In a couple cases, it was overly radical hospitality. Here's a prayer book. So I don't need to look at a prayer book or anything. I pretty much know this, okay? I've pretty much been doing this for a long time. Oh, we're here now. This is the prayer of confession, right? Like, I know. I'm Episcopalian. At this point, at St. Mark's Cathedral in Salt Lake City, my son bought me, he was 9 at the time, bought me cufflinks with the Episcopal. And I usually wear these, most Sundays I wear these to Mass. And I got the point, it was like, yeah, I'm Episcopalian. I know this book. So yeah, we are more diverse than we were, but we got a ways to go, and there's a lot of competition out there because there needs to be an understanding between white Episcopalians and black Episcopalians as to how we are, and we're just like the rest of you. No different. We want the same thing. We're all looking for Christ in our lives and how to better ourselves, and we're all coming to church for the same exact reasons. So, if you ever see a black face you're not used to, don't be overbearing. Don't keep looking. Usually you can tell if someone isn't Episcopalian or not, or isn't Catholic, because we're pretty much got the same stuff going on. Usually you can tell, and if you can really, you can look and say, oh, I don't think he really knows. Or if you've got a different book for like 7 different hymnals or whatever, you might be on but if they seem to know the flow, let it go. And say hi to them and invite them coffee hour and let them be it. But I kind of went off there, but that's the gist of it. Any questions or anything? Oh, well, let me tell you a little bit about UBE though.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the reason why UBE started anyway, and actually it began in you know what? About a few minutes. Anybody here an acolyte or Eucharistic minister or in the choir? We're good? Okay. Okay. All right. So the reason why UBE started is for the reasons that I mentioned. All right. And it started in 1968, so not quite 100, but no, half that, a little over half that. And it was started off as the, I might get the title wrong, the Union of Black Clergy and Laity, and now became the Union of Black Episcopalians. And the original intention of the Union of Black Episcopalians was to make sure that blacks in the church were treated equally, were advocated for, that we encouraged our young black people to have careers in the ordained clergy, the priesthood, to encourage us to get black bishops, and that has happened quite a bit since 1968, not quite enough, but it has happened. In the past, I would say 5 or 6 years, we've had more black bishops who are females, who are not just suffragan bishops, but actually diocesan bishops. And that has grown tremendously in Indianapolis, Chicago, Newark, and Burlington, Vermont. That's what I can think of, but there may be more that I'm not aware of. And there have been plenty of suffragans in the past too, starting with Barbara Harris, who was the not only the first woman bishop in the entire Anglican Union, but she was also a black woman too, and she was suffragan bishop of Boston from 1989 to she retired. I forget when she retired. I think it may have been in 2002. So we've accomplished that, but there's a lot more to accomplish too in the church. Unfortunately, UB has shrunk a great deal, and I gotta kind of build it back up again. So talking a little bit about the UB chapter here in Connecticut, Southern Connecticut Chapter, we started off as 3 different chapters in the Diocese of Connecticut: Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven. I was with the New Haven chapter because I was in West Haven. We decided to merge in 2013, merge New Haven and Bridgeport together to become the Southern Connecticut Chapter of the Union of Black Episcopalians. We did quite a bit. That was back in 2013. I got elected president. We did quite a bit. We had prayer marches, vigils in different drug-affected, violent neighborhoods. We had, we participated in organizing the celebration of life for a 18th, 19th century slave from Waterbury named Mr. Fortune. Well, I named him Mr. Fortune. His name was Fortune, but I call him Mr. Fortune. And I arranged for him to lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda in Hartford. And he was properly buried at the, I forget the name of the cemetery, Riverview Cemetery in Waterbury. And look, I encourage you to Google that online. It's a magnificent story. And I'm not going to get into it now because of the sake of time. So we did quite a bit. We also had the Martin Luther King service every year, as well as Zabs and Jones. So we did quite a bit. Unfortunately, as time went on, I had a good number of active clergy. And those active clergy ended up taking assignments other places. Maryland, Hartford, a couple in Hartford, I forget where else. And then I had quite a few active lay people that either moved or died. So we've actually been in hiatus. So when the pandemic hit, it was just after we had our large Martin Luther King service, and I did not get things back in motion, and I take full responsibility for that. So because by that point we had 2 active people. So I'm looking to build it up again, and Gail has actually given me the encouragement to do that. Because when I met Gail a couple weeks ago and she asked me to speak, it was like, oh, you're president of UBE. I'm like, oh yeah, I am. Yeah, I pretty much got to get that started up again, don't I? So I'm hoping to work with Gail and others because I'm not familiar with anyone this end of Fairfield County. So I'm hoping to get that started up again and to spread our work throughout all of Southern Connecticut as opposed to just between Bridgeport and New Haven. So any questions?
Where do you live? Where are you centered?
West Haven.
West Haven.
And my parish is Holy Spirit West Haven, the former Christ Church. As a matter of fact, this is our 300th anniversary. Yes, yes. And there were some people in that parish who were there from the beginning. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. I've not heard praising the British Empire for a long time.
Right.
Our Thurman, he had an interesting story. His grandmother, I believe, she was avoiding the letters of Paul, and in his book, and the way he explained, and in a way, was he was exalting the virtues of the Roman Empire, and. I think that because Paul was a Roman citizen, and I think that America has similar qualities too. That we should, if we're praising the British Empire and the Roman Empire, there is something probably positive in the American Empire as well. But here's my question. You said that you knew the book. Now, did you mean the Book of Common Prayer or the Bible?
Oh, the Book of Common Prayer.
How about the Bible?
I'm always learning that, as we all are.
That's interesting.
But yeah, actually, you know what? I don't think I've been into an Episcopal Church where everyone was at literally open Bible anyway. So so this was a prayer book that someone made sure I knew what page we were on and so forth.
Just have a little quick question. You're probably aware, I'm sure, that how the diocese wants all the churches to explore our historical past and all that. I was wondering, it's just a thought that floated into my head, and Gail is in charge of that whole thing with us, is that possibly a role that your part could take with us doing this, that we would have some kind of connection with you? You already outlined a lot of good history, and we're trying to uncover all this history, and the more history we can get, the better. Whatever it's going to be, we're not even sure still. We're trying to figure it out. But I was thinking you would be such a resource, you know, with what you have, and if there's some way we could be connected in some way when we're doing this, you know, you could, you know, be wonderful. I mean, you already
thanks.
are.
I don't know how much help I can be. You're talking about your own history.
And just because you see other churches, like we're going to get one of them that's already been further along, and she's going to share with us, you know, how she was doing it. and what they provided and what they came up with, and it's going to be a growing thing, I'm sure.
Mhm.
But you could see, you know, all of them. You could be like, I mean, you don't probably want to have more work to do, coordinating things, but you could at least share what you're seeing in the other churches as they start to embark on the same journey. I'm guessing there's only a few of us, right now.
It
We'll
really is.
become everybody.
It will eventually become
yeah.
every parish.
And if you are like involved with all these parishes, you know, that there's some way that you're seeing more. We're in our little cubbyhole, you know? And it could be, even you could have a vision where we need to go sometimes because of what you see.
I think
know?
she just maybe would ask some bishop. Or at least what the Austin Bishop supposed to do.
Yeah. But I mean, I just, from this particular concern vantage point, and also the diocesan bishop wouldn't see it from your lens because you experience it being a Black person. I'm thinking you could be more keenly aware, just even how you shared that feeling you had
Right.
when people were jumping all over you.
Well, you're the senior ward, right, Gail?
Yeah, where's Jane
Okay.
over there?
Oh,
Yeah.
The two of us, yes.
Oh, okay.
Co-board.
Oh, you're co-ward, sorry. All right, so if you need any help with anything she's talking about, just, I hope as best I can with whatever time I've got.
I don't want to make
One of the things that I think popped when Fran said what she said, and I'm listening as a white person, and you said, all right, 4 Black women in the room, what's your experience? We have not heard much. I mean, I've just started to hear it from people of color to say, we're in a trusting circle enough that I'll share with you what my experience was and is. Because there's a lot of is still, like, here's what I experienced. Here's the little microaggressions, we call them now, that nobody means to say, but it comes out. Like, until we start to hear that, which doesn't mean it's Black people's work to do that. We gotta create that environment of trust, we collectively. That's part of what we're trying to do. That's where I think there is, and I don't know what the future of Union of Black Episcopalians is, but there's a Black and brown voice that still needs to happen in trusting communities to start to, build something else. Sorry, that's my own little.
And you helped
absolutely
explain
agree
what
with
I
that.
was, that's really where I was coming from.
I absolutely agree with that, because in trying to get somebody who to come from my old church, and this is somebody I've known, and I was really surprised when she said to me, "Oh, you're going to bring somebody to talk about that?" I said, "Yes." So she said, "Well, I was given a letter from a former priest to come to St. Paul's, and I never heard from them." And I was like, "What? And you never said this to me before?" And this is, so it goes to show there are things out there, and this is someone I know personally, who I'm going to put you in touch with, because she's at a church where there are things happening now. Both St. Andrew's and St. John's in Stamford have changed.
Really?
St. John's, for example, has a huge Haitian, they have a Haitian community as well, so they have a Haitian ministry, but they also now have become more Jamaican than they were before. I don't know what that shift is about, because usually it was at St. Andrew's. And this Sunday morning, which is why she couldn't come, they're having their first joint sort of meeting and service together. Yeah, because they're thinking that they would like to do things together.
Right.
But St. Andrew's is going down, and so St. John's figured, they could find a way to build community together. But they may be a good start for you.
Oh, absolutely. I haven't been to St. John since Father Harding was there, and that's a long time now.
Very long.
Yes.
That piece about, that Father Daniel mentioned about trusting relationships, in my own experience in the Episcopal Church has always been, 97% white in the congregation, 1, 2, 3, 4 people of color. And it's always, been heartbreaking for me, but an observation of mine that there really is no real conversation about race in those situations, because it's just too difficult. And one of the beautiful things about the sacred ground stuff we're doing here and it's really growing.
Mhm.
I mean, I wish we could get the whole congregation. If we get
So
half,
you
it would
haven't
be
signed
great.
up yet?
Yeah.
There you go.
But it actually creates those relationships, and it's the first time that I have begun to hear, okay, well, this is my actual experience on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
You know, which is incredibly important for us to hear. So I think it's a great vehicle, but you know, we got a lot to do, but it's a great vehicle.
Look what you started, Steve.
I know. I've created a lovely monster.
More of that. Seriously, the
You're gonna
future is.
So you need to tell us how you found that slave, Mr. Fortune.
Yes, because.
Oh,
we're
well,
trying
I
to-
didn't personally find him. Really quick. Mr.
Actually,
Fortune.
let's make this a coffee hour question,
Okay.
because, well, you're gonna, in 18 seconds, this church will start whether we're there or not.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of have to be there.
Right.
Mr. Fortune was had been believed to be killed by his owner, Dr. Porter, who was a bone doctor, and his body was studied for scientific research. Yes, and he was on display. His skeleton was on display at the Manitowoc Museum in Waterbury for a number of years, field trips and so forth. And so eventually, he was taken down. Just someone had a conscience. He was basically put in boxes, and they decided, let's give him a proper burial. So I didn't initiate that. He was a member of St. John's Episcopal Church in Waterbury. He was baptized Episcopalian, basically because, and that's how the first black Episcopalians in the world were slaves, because they were the religion of their masters happened to be. So Dr. Porter, and yes, Connecticut has slaves, by the way. Dr. Porter had him baptized. It was at St. John's, and that's where he was buried from. So at the time, director of St. John's was Amy Wellen, and she came up to me about like you came up to me at the Absalom Jones service of 2013 and said, "Hey, we got these bones. We're going to do a burial. We want you guys involved in it." And of course, typical Stephen Mullins, I got to take it to a whole nother level. I'm like, well, yeah, we're going to be involved, but I'm going to have them laying in state in the Capitol Rotunda. So I went through all the red tape to doing that, and the state police were kind, and they had a beautiful escort from the Capitol to St. John's, and there was worldwide media, Al Jazeera, all the major networks, BBC, that covered this. So I highly recommend you Google Mr. Fortune Waterbury,
It's so cool.
and you will have all that information. And he's called Mr. Fortune because at the state capitol, I said that his name is Mr. Fortune. I added the Mr. because he did not get respect in life, so he's going to get respect in death, and that's what we did.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you so much.
everybody.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stay at your second coffee. I'm going to go to your mass. I won't be able to stay at your second coffee hour because I got to run to an event in New Haven. So, so it was great having you. And if you want to get in touch with Miguel, knows how to get in touch with me. Okay?
Thank you.
Hey, so good seeing you.